Welcome again to our morning talks with the smart people in the room. And I'm super excited and to introduce you. The Alex is a very dear friend of mine with a very deep roots from Ukraine. It's actually the second time where we have this founder to founder talks, both Alexes sitting together, and we touch a lot of very important topics. But I want to first give Alex you to introduce yourself quickly, and then we'll just dive in straight to the topics what we advertise for a week.
Sure. Alex, thank you for having me, and it's great to be here on Computera's Morning Talk. You're definitely correct in saying that you and I have some roots going back to the old country. You and I actually met in Kiev when we did some joint projects together, and I remember your beautiful office with that really nice bike that you have behind you. As a biker. I'm a founder and CEO of Global Edge Markets, GEM, and the topic of today's conversation is going to be about not only cost optimization for a lot of the e-commerce companies and a lot of the retailers, but also tariff engineering and trade optimization. And I feel, and you and I spoke about this, I feel that those two things are kind of interconnected, and the e-commerce companies that are sourcing from all over the world and retailers that are sourcing from all over the world can definitely benefit and optimize the business processes through cost optimization, checkout optimization, but also through tariff engineering and optimization of the logistic chains and trade optimization.
Yeah, this definitely. I really want you to touch this today more. What you think about that? Because again, in our perspective, this is cost. Even in general, even before those tariffs and all this uncertainty, was a very challenging data set for retail. How to keep it? You have some items was bought by one price. You need to utilize them, and how much. They all the often question what I got, Alex, how much think we need to give to observe our customers, and we need to observe on our margin. And this is a huge, really all the time challenge. And when this shaking tariffs happens or supply chain distribution shaking, this question really extrapolates, like extend X15. Yeah, and what is your Alex perspective on looking at this? What is the race? I know you're already working with multiple big brands, and what they think about? Like, what is like some kind of mainstreams there? What they
Right. Well, I'll be honest with you. A lot of retailers, a lot of the e-commerce companies, they're not thinking too much about it just yet. I believe they're beginning to. They're beginning to think about the tariffs. As you recall, there was even a bit of an excitement with the presidential office when Amazon decided to put two prices into the mix. And they said, okay, here's the price before tariffs, here's the price after tariffs, right? And that was met immediately with a lot of, oh my God, please take that down, because we want to make sure that you help the consumers, right? Although I'll be honest with you, that may not necessarily be true, that the retailers or e-commerce companies will necessarily be helping the consumers. They have to protect their business, they have to protect their margins. And in the case of Walmart, for example, those margins are tiny. They're extremely small, and that's why Computera, that's why GEM are there to help in terms of making sure that there's flexibility in the system, that you have a better handle on how you can manage those margins through cost optimization, through tariff engineering, and some of the other things. So in that particular case, there are a number of techniques and tips and tricks. I'll definitely call them tricks, because there's a lot of different things you can do on the trade side, and the people who are in the business, they know exactly what I'm talking about. But we'll definitely jump into it and talk about some of the challenges that retailers and e-commerce companies are facing and what they can do about this.
Yeah, this is, guys, just for the context. When the machine learning models, as like computer model, for example, they build in the favor of the customer. as well as, for example, ChatGPT is never biased. If we make the ChatGPT biased and you're from the conversations, they will be probably racist or do something bad thing. This is why a lot of engineers working very hard to make those AI really unbiased. And the same happens with guys where we model the price optimization. We say this is a fair price, whether I think the customer in Midtown New York can pay on Fifth Street on that thing. And what, Alex, I feel the customers come to me and say, Alex, your system recommend the price what is not fair because we have this cost. And I try to explain the cost for me is a bottom line, is a guardrail, but it's not what AI is optimizing for. The AI is optimizing for to maximize and show you the fair value, saying, guys, on that point, and this is why this was super resonating when you texted me in LinkedIn saying, hey, this exactly that they need to start optimizing the cost, but there's nothing to do. Honestly, I can't help them. I say, guys, I will protect AI to give you fair price for that bottle of water. And I say, if the bottle of water should cost here $3, you need to
Right.
find or other product or optimize cost of existing one. But from the customer perspective, this is optimal price. And if you can
Yep.
drop us some kind of maybe ideas how you exactly, I don't know, maybe do not disclose some of your know-how, etc. I know this may be partially the commercial thing, but if you can share some ideas at least in
Yeah.
which direction we can send the audience to you to that you can help, because I can help in this case. I
Of
say I
course.
will help.
Well, I think what tariff engineering, what trade optimization can do for the client is give them the leverage to make the decisions downstream, right? So, for example, if they wanted to find the margin, right, they or so that they can protect their customer, the consumer, and not necessarily increase the price, be competitive, be differentiated, right? They could to implement something earlier in the chain, in the value chain, such as tariff engineering. I'll give you, a lot of examples. Tariff engineering is actually broken into two or three different ways that you can save money. You can, become smarter about those things, right? So there's such a thing as a tariff classification. These are classification tables that, believe it or not, are still in some cases are still in spreadsheets, right?
I
Um,
believe.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then you have other things called duty drawbacks. This is when, so classification, tariff classification is when you classify a particular part that you import, let's say from China or Vietnam or Mexico or Canada or what have you, and you classify it as a finished aluminum product, as an example. Reason I picked on it could be a piece of electronics. Reason I picked on the aluminum product or piece of metal, if you will, that could be unfinished, is because there are a lot of tariffs that are tied to metal and aluminum and so forth and so on. So let's say they import a classified product called aluminum with a particular tariff percentage. Well, they could potentially reclassify it and make it a composite of aluminum and plastic, right? If that's the case, right? Or they can actually get involved with the manufacturing process and see if they can change something there. Or they can change the way that the part is gets assembled, on where it gets assembled. Maybe they'll find a unique source here in the United States, and it can actually get to the final assembly or pre-assembly here in the United States. So there are a lot of different things you can do. Number one. The second one is duty drawbacks. Duty drawbacks is when you actually import something and then you export something in the finished product. Microelectronics is a good example of that. You can take a component, you can put that component into some kind of a thing, and then you can export it as a finished product. And finally, what a lot of folks are doing is they're using something called FTZ, or foreign trade zones, where you literally not too far from the port, from the point of entry, you set up a free trade zone, and you do not use customs to take this part in. You don't import it until there's time to import it. So it's in time importing, if you will, right? By implementing a lot of these different techniques, what we call tariff engineering, you're able to save, excuse me, anywhere between 5 and 25% of the cost on the import duties. Now, what you can do with that 20% is then you can go to your step, right, to Computera step that basically says, oh, we now have more margin that we can play with, and we can program the algorithms. We can program AI, or we can give AI some input to say, look, these are some of the guardrails with which we can operate. So
Yeah,
I
technically
really,
help us to expand the guardrails. Yeah, no.
absolutely, absolutely. So that's why I believe that implementing this type of a process by you know looking further, or earlier, I should say, into the value chain, right, where you actually source the product, you can reclassify the product, you can assemble the product in a slightly different way, you can export the product and get the duty drawbacks, and also implement some of the other things like free trade zones or what have you, or just in time import. Those are the kinds of things that give retailers and e-commerce and Competera a lot more leverage to play with, and actually then potentially pass those savings, pass those cost savings to the consumer.
You know that I really like this resonate what you just said. Like technically, only crisis pushing us to do some
Right.
innovation in this space. But it's so resonant, Alex. I can mention the names, but we have a multi-billion-dollar corporations using us, and I see this as a cost. Just a very simple thing that to be able to code machine learning, right? To give the guardrail, we need to have a very good quality or historical cost. And this, I can't name you any project that it wasn't a problem. And most of them
Right.
are still sitting in Excels, having really limited visibility. And it's like, just maybe for the audience to summarize and keep me honest if I'm right. I feel like you guys coming, you run like some data analytics, existing kind of flows, what you guys
Right.
buying, where this import export compliance. Then you can first of all forecast the future regulatory impacts that
Correct.
give you some visibility and make it as a process, not like one-time consulting thing that explain and run. You can build a system that can continuously help you to reassess, forecast the impacts on the final margin, and
Right.
then you can really decide: should you rebuild? Should you change the road? That we all heard, like Apple promise, Tim Cook promised it to Trump that he will build a huge facilities right in
Right.
Texas, but finally, just first thing what they done, they moved from China to India. They're
Right.
manufactured. Yeah, and this is also a thing because now the import from India would be cheaper than from China. Yeah,
Correct. And I
but
mean, you definitely have to invest into data. You definitely have to invest into understanding what is the final, let's say, landed cost maybe, and how you can impact it, right? Because of all of this volatility, we can talk about the tariff volatility, and this is when the White House can wake up tomorrow and say, okay, you know what, we decided to increase tariffs to 200% from 50% or something along those lines. And that level of volatility, you have to be almost prepared for it in the sort of a disaster management or disaster recovery role. But for that, you need to have deep understanding of your data, deep understanding of your classification table, and then, in order for you to be able to then go to the Competera step and the cost optimization step, you have to have that leverage, right? And if
yeah,
the
I'm not
only way
gonna.
you're going to be able to,
Yeah, I just double click here. So like I hear you correctly. Technically, you're saying like this is what I do with pricing. That you need to be agile in this process because you're
very
right. Tomorrow there's a new tariff or new things
correct,
coming, and it is
correct,
actually a question: do you have enough data that you can review weekly by weekly, whatever cadence,
absolutely,
and then just adjust and say, okay, now we manufacture this week by taking the aluminum finished stuff not from India, from China. We'll go back.
that's correct, that's correct.
And this is
And you
kind
have
of
to, what's great about AI and what's great about a lot of the new innovations and technologies is that you can play different scenarios, what if scenarios, right? So you're absolutely correct. You know, what if the tariff from India is going to be one X, and then China is Y, and Vietnam is Z? How can you re-optimize the picture? Can you reclassify? How can you change different parameters and so forth? This is where AI is going to play a significant role. Now, if you tie this to the actual e-commerce portion of the business, and if you tie this to the cost optimization portion of the business, then you increase your chances of success, and you increase your chances of being a lot more competitive, where you are absolutely immune to those types of volatilities, right? So it's almost like when startups ask for money from the investors, they typically present a financial model, right? And they simulate those models, and they give you the worst case scenario, they give you the best case scenario, they give you something in the middle. You absolutely have to do the same thing here, right? So it becomes, trade becomes a very volatile but very important part of the business. And physically, some companies simply cannot reshore and come, and source completely from the United States. I mean, think about the latest report where I think it was McKinsey or somebody did an assessment of what the car would cost if every part of that car was manufactured and sourced in the United States. I think it was something like $200,000 or two hundred fifty
Yeah,
thousand
yeah,
dollars,
yeah. That sounds
right?
like it's crazy.
Now,
That's true.
imagine now the issue with Computera and some of the retailers that you're working with, and all of a sudden the cost is tremendous, right? What are they supposed to do? They have two options or three options. They can absolutely erode their margins. Now, if they're a publicly traded company, the shareholders are going to go nuts, right? Number two, they can reprice, right, based on the cost
Those
fluctuations,
customers. Yeah.
and potentially lose customers, exactly. Or they can be ready for something like this, and they can potentially project, they can even plan, right? Because this may not be there forever. All right. I mean, here we are, at the trade war with China, and all of a sudden we have an agreement, right? So they do not necessarily, they can come out with their customers and say, look, we're going to be solid, we're going to take the hit for the next 6 months to a year, we're going to protect you as our consumer, we don't want to lose you, right? That's our competitive advantage. That's our pledge to you, right?
Yeah, actually, just maybe just reflect what you just said. You're right. On first option, this is exactly what I see. It's not really happens everywhere, but some categories, you're right. I see the guy's optimal price is so way below that you're just cost plus model. I mean that your
Right.
target margin like 25, 30%, but your optimal
Exactly.
price is already here. And it's like just not
Exactly.
go scenario. And you're right,
Right.
your shareholders would be pissed off. Same time, if you do this fix, you'll lose your audience immediately to someone who already not all maybe not realize that they're still selling from the old stock thing,
Right.
or they already did a third option. What you said, I think, is also right, is about between the balance. What I know the Walmart right now doing, they write off of this kind of claiming directly the tariff implication, because it was signal for government, and government in each country should look good guy, right? They can't look bad guy. This is why, of course, it was immediately pushed back by government that retailers, you can't do that way. You can say this price is
Correct.
this, but there's a tariff impact that one. This is just a question how long you can survive and be banned, or have some other policies. And the only one vision is actually, of course, this distribute those margin. Some will think, of course, will go to the pocket of us as a consumers. Some will
Yeah.
go to the observing your margin. But the third thing, what Alex guy is bringing right now to the table, saying treat your trade as a product. You
Correct.
have you have data, you have process, you have what if scenario modeling, and with the guys who already came analyzed your source of sourcing those products, changing them. I know retail is very slow to change organization. I see this even from the price perspective, but I know the supply chain is even more complicated thing to change. But what we're
Correct.
saying today, guys, is just about modeling first, knowing second, and then making this again. If you review this in agile way and think that this, guys, is not something we agreed one sourcing place like India or is a country, and we do this way. I think that we should have a 2, 3, 5 options, and have the tool that can model for us the future, and of course implication of different tariff and different scenarios. As you mentioned, for example, just a fun story. I just moved my motorcycle. I sent from Europe to America, and guess what? Of course, I paid everything. I paid like almost price of that motorcycle just to move the motorcycle. It's
Yeah.
another story that is actually very personal for me, because guys who assembled this motorcycle, some of them is not alive anymore. Unfortunately, they was on the first line of protecting the Kiev, and I decided to like relocate the motorcycle here. And guess what? They came to the port. They said you have 48 hours to complete all the paperwork. You pay immediately everywhere. This done, because then it charged $1 per kilogram. It's a
Wow.
665 kilogram old. I don't know why a motorcycle is only 300. There's some like boxes, whatever, I don't know. And now I have, then it was like some labeling issue, what I wasn't involved in this. Of course, those they start ticking. And I see, for example, before this guy's interview, I spoke with a list of my e-commerce customers, and we asked them only one input: give me your cost. Give me your COGS technically. Even don't need to,
Yeah.
this was in context of Amazon, don't need to
Right.
have
Your
a,
landed cost, basically. Yeah.
yeah. And guess what, Alex? The answer is like where you manage your cost, where you manage your COGS.
Right.
40 different answers, 40. Some, most of
Right.
them, of course, Excels. Someone using specific software, what is actually not quite familiar, and they don't believe what is numbers is there. And I'm shocked. There is 1.9 million Amazon sellers exist.
Mm.
2.1 of this million make at least $100,000 a month on sales,
Mm.
and they're really bad on this on the
Right.
cost management. They don't have it. Like they say, hey, I just try to predict that the whole the story about motorcycle. I still don't know how much it will cost me to finally get this item here. You
Right.
know, this, can you imagine this, you e-commerce seller, and you do this, and there's a huge mess there, and it's probably they using some kind of very huge averages assumptions on this cost.
Correct.
And
Right.
if
And
you,
again, the point is that there are a number of techniques. You don't have to, take guesses. You can actually implement some of these techniques and come up with a really good strategy that consists of not only management of this process, but also consists of some of the disaster recovery, disaster management type of components that says, look, if we're going to commit to serving our consumer and protecting our consumer from a standpoint of pricing, from a standpoint of from a standpoint of a relationship with the consumer, from a standpoint of marketing, even right, it impacts marketing for the entire company. Then we have to take care of the back end. We have to take care of the costs. We have to take care of the unpredictable nature of the volatility of tariffs. We have to take care of the tariff management, and all of that can be accomplished by providing this cushion and a number of different techniques that you can implement deep into the logistics chain, deep into the import chain, and so forth. So I think the advice to a lot of the retailers and e-commerce companies, from small to large, look into your tariffs from a standpoint of, you correctly said that, from a standpoint of a product and how this product fluctuates in under any type of conditions.
yeah, I think it's a great note, Alex. I see you added few case studies. As we have 5 minutes left, if you can brought us technically what this challenge was, what the jump solution was there, just so I think we already landed to the guys, the audience, that this can be sold. It actually can
Right.
be a product, your trade policy, and how we manage this properly. But can you maybe just give us few examples from the key studies? What
Yeah, yeah,
you
absolutely. So I'm not going to mention any names to protect the innocent, but you look at an average manufacturing firm, which it could be importing electronics, it could be importing finished goods made out of aluminum or metal or steel or something like that. And the way that they can absolutely look into their buying patterns is, first of all, you look at the physical, look at the physical logistics chain, right? What are the countries that are in play, right? So with one customer, they actually manufactured, the country of origin was China. Then they switched to a country of origin of Vietnam, right? Because Vietnam offered better tariff percentages. Then U.S. government put more tariff percentages on Vietnam, so they had to literally change the strategy a little bit more. Then the product would travel to Canada, okay, for some additional assembly. Then it would cross the border to the United States for some additional assembly. Then it would literally go to Mexico for some additional assembly and then come back to the United States. So imagine you start with the country of origin. You Every time you cross the border, you have to pay the tariff, right? So you go from China or Vietnam to Canada to the United States, maybe back to Canada. There are a lot of, believe it or not, in the automotive industry, there are a lot of border located companies, because they're literally, working on the part in the United States one day, and that same day that part goes to Canada, crosses the border, and then comes back, right? Um, So what the company had to do is they had to take a look at the entire logistics chain, right, and potentially change it, right. So they started looking into a variety of different things. Believe it or not, they were doing this semi-manually, right. They started looking into some of the suppliers in the United States. They started comparing costs. They started comparing, what can we do to the manufacturing process. So all of a sudden, this tariff situation impacted manufacturing, impacted assembly, impacted the import duties, import a lot of different things, and they had to re-engineer the entire process, and they had to re-engineer even potentially the way that the part was manufactured. So what we were able to do is we were able to help them um, sort of optimize the entire route, to do what if analysis. You can definitely, there are a number of platforms that are AI based platforms that can help you do that, right? That in your particular case, they can tap into the costs, and they can
Yeah, this is what
tap
I
into the
reading this
pricing.
case study right now. You said like technically, just to summarize, you did like a tariff reclassification and you
Correct,
optimize those roads for them
correct,
with
correct.
some
Right,
probability, and this allows them to
right.
reduce tariffs impact by 12%, which is like insane.
Correct. Yeah,
I know,
12 to
guys.
15% for a high volume, a high volume e-commerce company, or high volume manufacturer or assembly type of a company. That's a huge savings.
Of course, yeah, this is no doubt. I mean, what I'm looking for right now, this is saying, can you imagine? You're right. The first of all is a big hit on the groceries. They already having
Right.
very, very small, tiny margins, and the bigger the groceries, the margins are really tiny.
Correct.
We're speaking, guys, about 0 point something. Like
Right.
operational margin of the big grocery retail is 0.5, 0.8. Like
Right.
best of them performing than 2%. How come we can imagine if we're getting like 20, 30% impact on tariffs, this already done. Like is they
Yes.
all do this.
Absolutely.
And just want to
Absolutely.
remind you guys that retailers the biggest and the commerce players the biggest taxpayers in any country. And
Right.
if we will not look on the Forbes top list of the richest people, we will see top Forbes by cash savings is also a retail company. The number one
Yeah.
is a Walmart. The second one is Apple. Third one is a Zara. That's just to
Correct.
think like where the cash is sitting. Like Google has literally no. They're even not in the list. They have no cash reserves. I mean, hitting. Applying this stuff, not optimizing this stuff, really hitting the biggest taxpayers, what can actually then extrapolate for much more worse thinking, like layoffs, etc. Just we
Of
need to
course.
remember that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Alex, this was impressive. I really love it. I think we don't want to overwhelm the guys in the morning with the
Right.
coffee, but I think just to summarize, guys, the jam can help you to really at least start thinking, or at best case, build your trades process as a product, treat this as a product,
Correct.
make them as much agile as possible, what helps you to, of course, decrease your cost. And because right now, if you just go straight, you will be missed. Like from the price perspective, consumers, this called price perception index, will be immediately destroyed if you just do this simple cost plus think you can do this in this environment. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and again, crisis, we need to use a crisis as an opportunity to innovate and rebuild. Because how we live in 2025, what I think in 3 4 years right now, right, Alex, the prediction we will go on the shop with robots, and the robot prediction of the robots is even higher than for the cars, because people will more adopt the personal robotics than cars. And we're thinking like, hey, in 3 years ahead, we have robots walking behind our back to the grocery shopping, but same time we manage our costs and excels. And guys, literally, I spoke
Absolutely.
more than 40 retailers, e-commerce retailers, few last weeks. Everyone just said exactly what Alex said. That is like Excel management thing. I bought there, I move, and they honestly they have even no just very basic thing, just to calculate the whole chain. That I bought
Right.
it from buy to sell, what exactly cost, what my cost of
Absolutely.
goods sold. This is a really big problem. Please reach out to Alex. I think is a great company can help you guys to this, because I'm really one of the want you to help and want to really care about optimal price, not optimal cost. It's not my monkey. This is Alex monkey.
Right, right, exactly. Well, I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to discuss this very, very important topic, and I think I truly believe that the it starts from the origin, it starts from the import side, and it eventually makes it over to your area of responsibility, or your area of services and products and so forth, which is how it comes out as a cost to the consumer, or as a cost to you as a business, and as a price to the consumer.
Yeah, by the end of the day, optimizing all of the chain, we make those prices and more affordable, optimal
Right.
for us as a consumers. We can speak with right now from the consumer perspective. We also go shopping, right? And I don't want to
Correct.
go and realize one day that X was 2 times more expensive. Actually, it was, you see, in California, it was released the law that is only like a free treat chickens can be like, it's like cage-free chicken,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
only manufacturer who has this kind of certification, they can supply the eggs to the stores. And it was
Right.
disaster. Like, this is my, can you imagine, guys? There's my friend, he run like multi-billion-dollar startup. He's just calling me, Alex, you don't know this, I just driving 40 minutes to the small village to buy the eggs. This is what
Right.
I'm doing. Rather than run the
Right.
team making the money, I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
driving to buy the eggs because it will be a shortage. Yeah, we're
Absolutely.
playing with the fire in this days. Alex, thank you again a lot. Yeah,
Thank you,
and
Alex.
in New York. Yeah, and
Yes.
so it was nice to have you here in this founding
Yes.
talks.
All the
Thank you.
best to you and everybody in our audience. We'll have more supporting material for this video, for this broadcast.
Yeah,
And
we will
Alex,
repost this and you will
yeah,
post, guys. Please follow
yeah,
Alex LinkedIn. You will see all the stuff and
yeah.
much more cool stuff.